Hello, my name is Virgil Hamilton. If you are a construction electrician who works in King, Kitsap, Jefferson, or Clallam counties, your wages are about to be reduced. That is the bad news. The good news is that you can do something about it. But please give me a few minutes to explain what is happening. This is a message for the unrepresented electricians who work in this area. We have also mailed this video to the union electricians so they know exactly what message was sent to you, so you can have a conversation later. Over the last several decades, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW, and the union contractors we partner with have largely let go of the light commercial and residential market. But things are about to change. We are in the worst construction economy we have seen since the Great Depression over 80 years ago. Because of this recession, many of you have been unemployed or underemployed these last couple of years, and many of you have fallen victim to wage cuts, working less hours and getting paid less per hour as the contractors struggle to compete against each other in this economy. The IBEW and the union contractors we partner with are working to recapture the market sectors we let go of in the past. We thought that you deserved to know what's happening and that you had the option to change it. Having said that, we thought you should know we are adjusting our wages on a job-to-job basis and taking some other actions to make our union contractors more competitive so we can regain the market sectors we let go of previously, namely the light commercial, mixed use, and residential sectors. So what does that mean? Simply put, your employer may need to reduce your wages to compete against the union contractors, but you have the option to prevent this from happening. We have already started to pick up some projects that our contractors normally would not be able to get at full union wages. Some of the non-union contractors have remarked that union contractors have never taken these types of jobs away from them before. Some examples of projects we have recently been awarded are the Chipotle Mexican Grill in Woodinville, the Wild Fin American Grill in Issaquah, the Umpqua Bank in Seattle, Nordstrom's Rack in Seattle, Fort of Kirkland. Without adjusting our wages, we never could have been awarded these projects. The members of IBEW Local 46 and our partner contractors are going to take as many of these projects as possible. We will do whatever it takes to reclaim the market share we once had. Before your employer tells you that you need to take a wage cut to compete against our new strategy, we wanted to give you some options. But let's first talk about how this works, and please bear with me for a few minutes. We will learn what controls our wages, and then we'll talk about fixing our problems. You might be thinking this is a everybody joins the union video, but it's not. Please watch, and it will all make sense at the end. Now, we all know that when our contractors bid work, they all pay relatively the same price for material. That leaves two variables, labor and overhead. Overhead will always be a variable inasmuch as each contractor has their own way of running their office and managing their job sites. That leaves labor as the last variable. And over the last 35 years, we have been competing against each other as electricians. We consistently cut each other's wages by letting our employers use our wages as a variable. The IBEW has always been a labor union whose sole purpose has been to get the best wages, benefits, and working conditions possible for our members. Please take the time to watch this information and learn what controls your wages. Only then can the union and the unrepresented electricians work together to better everyone's wages. 120 years ago, the IBEW came up with a plan to get better wages, and it was very simple. To get good wages and safer working conditions, the electrical workers of 1891 had to negotiate their wages as a group, not as individuals. We call that collective bargaining. That means all electricians must stand together to control a majority of the manpower supply so we cannot be replaced. So back in 1891, the key to all of this was to educate all the electricians about collective bargaining and market share. This market share graph is a representation of the percentage of work being performed by IBEW contractors since 1891 when the IBEW started. The plan we just looked at worked very well, and by 1947, The IBEW controlled all the work aside from the one-man shops. We had 93% market share throughout the residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. We did it all, and we made good wages. A lot of people don't know that until 1974, residential work paid the same wage as industrial work, but it sure isn't that way today. So you might be asking, how can a labor union that's sole purpose is to get the best wages possible for its members is now sending me a video message telling me they are getting more competitive and that will cause my wages to drop? Well, it's real simple. We are taking a step back so we can fix the problem and then do better after the fix. In the IBEW, we made some terrible mistakes, and that caused the situation we have now. We have one wage rate in the industry for industrial and heavy commercial, but as we get down to light commercial and residential, the average wage is extremely low and barely any benefits at all. If you work in that part of the industry, you know what I mean. So what was right in 1947 that is so very wrong today? Simply put, all electricians in 1947 stood together and negotiated their wages as a single entity through collective bargaining. Unfortunately, we started some practices back in the late 40s that caused us problems later. You see, we started a formal apprenticeship program in 1941, which was a very good thing. But shortly after doing so, we started thinking that to enter the electrical trade, which was totally dominated by the IBEW, you must first come through our apprenticeship program, and to get into the program, you had to be related to somebody who was already a member. We will refer to this market share graph a lot during this video. It's really a great way to understand the history of the electrical trade that affects all of our wages. We started the graph at the year 1891 when the IBEW started. Market share is the definition of how much of the market a company or co-op has for the product they sell. The more market share you have, the more you can control the price, which in our case is wages and benefits. As electricians, there are two things we need to understand about what affects our wages. We've already talked about market share, but let's also talk about the economic cycle of construction. We will use this sine wave to represent the construction economy and how it affects us. Not understanding this information is why our wages have not kept up with inflation over the last 35 years. About 60 years ago, we started those bad practices in the IBEW that we previously mentioned. Back then, the IBEW members thought that if they kept the number of IBEW members low, then during slow times they would still be fully employed. Problem was, during the good times, the IBEW didn't have enough workers to meet the demand. As unrepresented workers filled the gap during the good times, they learned the electrical trade very well, working on union job sites, but not being allowed to join the union. As soon as the work slowed down, we kicked those non-members to the curb, so that the IBEW members could stay fully employed even during the slow times. Can you imagine how those people felt, not being allowed to join the IBEW and being the first ones laid off every time? When the non-members found themselves unemployed, they started non-union shops. Mainly they started residential shops because that sector takes the least amount of tools and overhead to get started. This cycle grew over the next few decades, and the IBEW lost market share. But IBEW members did not become alarmed, because they still had full employment in the commercial and industrial sectors. But losing the residential sector was the start of a huge loss. And in 1974, we had the first residential wage that was lower than commercial and industrial. For those of you that work in residential, just think about that for a minute. Before 1974, all electricians made the same wage: residential, commercial, and industrial. Every job was a prevailing wage job. Then between the mid-70s to the mid-80s, the non-union shops grew large enough to take some good-sized commercial jobs. The union market share, the collective bargaining market share, continued to drop because we could be replaced. During the mid-80s, the IBEW members realized they had made a terrible mistake by keeping unrepresented electricians from joining the IBEW. And they decided to restart the organizing program that worked so well from 1891 to 1947. This helped us to stop the drop in market share, but our market share gains since we restarted organizing have been very slow. Unfortunately, when the IBEW members restarted organizing, most members didn't really have their heart in it. In the mid-80s, we would only organize electricians if the entire shop came over. In 1891, every IBEW member organized unrepresented electricians. When we restarted organizing in the mid-80s, we left that task to a few paid organizers. I came into the trade in 1990, and I can remember hearing the phrase, "They can't do the big jobs without us," meaning the non-union contractors have become so large they can do everything but the big jobs without the IBEW electricians. Many IBEW members were still not enthusiastic about organizing. Some members even tried to sabotage organizing by treating newly organized members poorly, trying to drive them back to the non-union side. We also had a journeyman test that was incredibly hard to pass. I am happy to say that we are back on track, and today over 40% of our members are organized, meaning they did not come through the apprenticeship. Now let's fast forward to today. In the Seattle area, the union contractors are doing about 82% of the industrial electrical work, 76% of the large commercial work, 51% of the medium commercial work, 46% of the light commercial work, and 15% of the residential. When you average it all out, balancing each sector against its volume, the union contractors have about 52% of the entire electrical market in this area. This number goes up and down based upon which sector is up or down at any given time. When the residential sector was thriving a few years ago, we had less IBEW market share because that is our weak sector. So why do we care about all this? As electricians, why do we care about the scorecard and who's up or down? Because the contractors use our wages to bid against each other. And until we come together, union and unrepresented electricians alike, we will continue to get beat up by the bidding process. We had it good in 1947. We messed it up. And now we must fix it. Right now, for the first time in over 65 years, the union electricians are truly ready to take the steps to fix our problems. We have always worked hard to increase wages, but that becomes harder and harder as the non-union contractors get more work, because the union contractors compete against the low wages paid by the non-union contractors. And because of that competition, we have not kept up with inflation over the last 35 years. Have you ever asked for a pay raise only to hear your employer say, "I can't pay you more than the competition pays their electricians," and still get the job? As an organizer for the IBEW, I have walked on many non-union prevailing wage job sites and have had an unrepresented electrician tell me, "I already make your wages, but I don't have to pay dues." The people who give me that answer really don't understand what they are saying. You see, prevailing wage is set from a survey of the prevailing wages in the area. And in this area, the union contractors have enough market share to prevail. That means, in this area, prevailing wage is union scale, and union scale is prevailing wage. But because the non-union contractor market share has increased over the years, the union electricians have not done as well negotiating wage increases as we should have. So the person telling me, "I make your wages," should understand the real situation is that union wages would be higher, and therefore prevailing wage would be higher, if there wasn't 48% non-union contractor market share, keeping union scale down. Keep union scale down, and you keep prevailing wage down. So instead of, "I make your wages, but I don't have to pay dues," the honest answer should be, "I make your wages," which could be a lot higher if we were standing together. This is also true for the electricians that tell me, "I make above average." Question those electricians need to ask themselves is, what sets the average? A better statement would be, "I make above average, but I sure wouldn't mind the average being a little higher." There's one more thing we need to cover before we get to the answers, and that is how unrepresented electrician wages are set at the non-union shop. In general, contractors have a goal of paying high enough wages so their best workers don't go to work for the competitor. We see a lot of this at the union contractors, where journeymen are getting foreman pay even though they are not running work. A typical non-union contractor will pay the top 10% of their electricians close to or even above union scale, so they A, don't join the union, and B, tell all the employees under them that the union is a bad thing. A lot of non-union shops have a policy where you can't discuss wages with your coworkers. Why is that? It's a big secret. Really? Why? If you really want to understand what's happening, take a look at the difference in bid prices on recent jobs, and then look at the difference in wages from shops who bid. It's not uncommon to have bids that are within 5% from shops that have a payroll difference of 50%. That means the contractor that is paying the lower wage is making a lot more profit. We plan to start informing you of this disparity on these jobs. Non-union contractors will deny these things to the end, but many of you have witnessed this firsthand. And don't get me wrong, I am not trying to be sarcastic about the non-union contractors. Many of them are great people, but in the market niche they operate in, they truly don't believe that they can pay union wages and still survive. I am not trying to be disrespectful of anyone. We are all responsible for the decline in our wages. I have shared but a few of the mistakes that the IBEW has made, and the unrepresented electricians and non-union contractors also have some of the responsibility. I know that some unrepresented electricians are thinking, I work steady and I make fair wages. I don't see a problem. But I know that many of you have had your wages and benefits reduced. And that will continue if we don't start rowing this boat in the same direction. We talked about the cycle and what has happened over the last 35 years. If we don't all change our ways, our wages will never keep up with inflation. One more question. Will you be able to comfortably retire on the retirement you are building today? Okay, so enough about background and philosophy. Let's talk about the strategy to fix this. Let's first talk about the economic construction cycle. We all know that it is boom and bust. Looking at this graph, we know that when we get to this dashed line, approximately, we are fully employed. At this point, we have more jobs than electricians. This is a key point because this is when contractors slow down on bidding work, because they simply can't perform the work without the manpower. And more specific, people who are good at running work. This is also when the most stealing of foremen happens between shops. Now looking at the bottom of this economic cycle, this is where we have more electricians than jobs. So again, when we are down in the bottom end like we are right now, many non-union contractors have told their crew that everyone is getting a pay reduction. One local shop simply laid off all employees making over $30 per hour. Let's now take a look at the transition and understand what will happen as we ramp up, coming out of this recession. Traditionally, the IBEW contractors did not have the option to target work as easily as the non-union contractors, who could easily drop wages to be competitive. That meant the IBEW electricians were the last ones to reach full employment. That also meant that going into the next boom, before the economy dictated pay increases for construction workers, the non-union contractor had full crews, enabling them to take more work during the rise of the boom, building their bankroll. The cycle is simple. Bid jobs, hire electricians. Bid hire, until the manpower is dried up, and then stop bidding. This cycle has been the growth method that has bred the non-union market share, making it harder for the IBEW electricians to negotiate good wages. The above average electricians are getting above average pay of a smaller than could be average. To say it a little simpler, we could all be making more money, even the above average. But this time, and in future cycles, the IBEW 46 electricians are going to play the game a little bit different. We are going to do what it takes on a job-per-job basis to be competitive. Here's the key. We know that during this upward ramp, we need to absorb as much manpower as possible. So the union contractors will go farther up the ramp before they slow down on the bidding due to a lack of manpower. What this means to the unrepresented electricians is job opportunities. This means collective bargaining strength for the union, which means the average wage and the prevailing wage will be higher for us all. Remember I said we have a long-term strategy? It's time to realize we are in the same boat and start rowing in the same direction. We can only do that by standing together. Now I know that many of you are thinking that we are leading up to an everybody joins the union plan, but we are not. That would be the easiest way to accomplish the task. But I know that some of you have heartburn over the actions of the IBEW in the past. I know that some of you have been members before and were not treated well. I apologize for that. So we are in the same boat, and here are the options to row in the same direction. We can sign contractors to shop agreements between the owner and the employees, not the IBEW. These agreements can simply say that the shop agrees to pay the state prevailing wage rate on all future jobs, after we get an agreed-to list of contractors signed to the agreement. Once again, we can make a list of all the major non-union competitors in the area. We can ask them all to sign an agreement that states when all contractors on this list sign this agreement, then all the contractors on this list pay prevailing wage on all future jobs not already awarded. Why would a contractor not be willing to pay prevailing wage if all the contractors they bid against are paying the same wage? If we do this, no contractor is put at a competitive disadvantage. Now I can tell you that most of the non-union contractors will be scared of any kind of an agreement, even if it does not say IBEW. They will have many excuses why this is a bad idea, but mostly they will be afraid of losing their ability to drop your wages at a moment's notice to compete with each other. So you have to ask yourself if you want to continue the path where we as electricians harm each other financially, or start to stand together. If your answer is that we start to row in the same direction, then we need to meet and establish a line of communication. We have knocked on a lot of unrepresented electrician doors in the last 6 months. Maybe yours was one of them. But now that we are rolling out this plan, we are going to step it up. If you are totally against everything that you have heard, it would be easiest if you call us and let us know that. Then we won't bother you. If you want to be a part of the answer to better wages, then you should call us and let us know that as well. It will save us from knocking on your door when you are not home or at an inopportune time. Once we establish communications with the electricians who are on board with the idea of better wages, then we will lay out the rest of the plan. It will depend on how much interest we get as to what path we take. If we get no interest, then we will continue down the path to gain market share through wage adjustments. That will have a negative effect on all of us. That is the hard way. I believe that we are smarter than that. The success of this plan will be decided when you decide to go to your coworkers and get them to watch this DVD. We will supply all the copies necessary. Just give us a call and tell us where to drop them off. Please don't talk about this on the job site during regular work time, only during lunch or before or after work. In summary, the IBEW plans to go after work we have previously walked away from. We intend to do this before the next upward ramp really starts, so we can control more of the work at the top end of the cycle. This will cause you a wage reduction unless you decide to take one of two actions. You can take one of the union jobs when we get to the point where we have more jobs than workers. Or you can stand with your coworkers and get a shop agreement. The IBEW will help you with that, regardless of whether or not you are a member. We will do that because your success helps us all. Before you decide which route you want to take, let me explain a little something. Union electricians can work for all union contractors and all non-union contractors. Unrepresented electricians can only work for non-union contractors. You see, one of the biggest mistakes we made in the IBEW, alongside keeping people out, was to not let our members work for the non-union contractor so they can get to know you and build a friendship. 120 years ago, all IBEW members worked for non-union and built those friendships. On another note, we are opening our house to have all unrepresented electricians come and talk about what's happening. Hear the updates, give comments, and ask questions. This unrepresented electrician meeting is your meeting. We are just providing the place. The meeting will be on the fourth Wednesday of each month at 5:30 at the Local 46 Union Hall. We are also starting a monthly communication program so we can get to know you and keep you updated on this overall plan. We don't want to bother anyone, so if you do not want any communication, then give us a call, email, or mail us a note. One last item. IBEW Local 46 now has associate memberships available. For a $25 per year fee, you can get all your journeyman CEU classes or trainee class time for free. We also have OSHA 10, 30, first aid, exam prep, and master exam prep available. You can access the schedule online or call us and we will mail you one. The associate membership will also get you our newsletter. Local 46 will spend a lot more on just printing the newsletter and mailing it to you than $25 per year. If you want to become a full member of the IBEW, that is very easy as well. In summary, We have shown you how all of our wages will drop if we don't act together. It's your choice. Do nothing and suffer, or spend just a little time communicating with each other, read a newsletter once a month, come to a meeting, and be part of making the industry better for all electricians and contractors. So give us a call. Let us know what you think. Thanks for your time. I hope to see you soon.